Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the documentary the New York Times presents, Framing Britney Spears? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoy this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. The Framing Britney Spears documentary was released on February 5, 2021. It contains a number of interviews and reporting designed to shed light on the Britney Spears conservatorship. Its runtime is 74 minutes. It's not a lot of time to cover all the information in this case. There were a few items that were important, which the documentary left out. But at the same time, there was some new information included. I will provide a summary of the documentary, offer my critique of it, and then provide my opinions of the conservatorship itself. Starting with the summary. Britney Spears came from humble beginnings in Mississippi to rise to fame as a musical pop star. She has been described as intelligent, energetic, innovative, creative, and hardworking. She had to battle with quite a bit of sexism in order to secure her place as a celebrity. In 2008, a legal guardianship, referred to as a conservatorship, was put in place to protect Britney Spears, ostensibly because of her unusual behavior. At first, the conservatorship was temporary, but it became permanent a few months later. At the time making this video, the conservatorship is still in place. Here are a few examples of the worrisome behavior covered in the documentary. Britney Spears driving with her son on her lap, shaving her head, and hitting a photographer's pickup truck with an umbrella. Other concerns that I do not recall being included in the documentary are the alcohol and drug use and the speaking in unusual accents. It has been theorized that Britney Spears suffers from some type of mental disorder. She has implied it is bipolar disorder, but I'm not aware that's ever been confirmed. The documentary discusses how there are a number of people who are concerned that the conservatorship is not appropriate and how this has led to the Free Britney movement. The Free Britney members believe that the conservator, Jamie Spears, the father of Britney Spears, could be controlling Britney Spears and may not be treating her well in general. They believe that Britney Spears is under this conservatorship in part because she is a woman, not due to any type of unusual behavior. They find it puzzling that Britney Spears would be capable of performing on stage but not be considered competent to control her own life. They find it unfair that Britney Spears is paying for all sides of this legal battle. For example, she is paying the attorneys who may be working to oppose her wishes. And they believe that Spears wants to be free of the legal guardianship altogether and would be better off without it. Spears has expressed appreciation for their support, which they take as a mandate to continue the Free Britney movement. The documentary covers some of the wishes of Britney Spears. For example, they talk to attorneys involved in the case. Evidently, when the conservatorship was being established, Spears acknowledged that it was going to happen, but she did not want her father to be the conservator. She also wanted to have her own attorney who she could direct, but the court appointed a lawyer instead. Later, Spears again asked that her father be replaced. The courts denied this request, but did appoint someone else to manage her person, while her father continues to manage her finances. The conservatorship is divided between the person and the estate. Apparently, Spears indicated she would refuse to work as long as her father was the conservator. The documentary really doesn't emphasize the side of the lawyers, the court, or Jamie Spears. I don't feel like they covered this as well as the opinions expressed by the Free Britney movement members. I think what happened here is that many of the people involved on that side did not want to talk about the situation publicly, or they were not permitted to. Now moving to my analysis of the documentary. I thought this documentary was fairly good overall, but I did have some criticisms. I'll go through the parts I liked, and then I'll discuss the areas that needed improvement. Starting with the positives. I liked the way the documentary talked about how Britney Spears started in the industry, the talent that she showed, the challenges she overcame, the role her parents played in helping her to become successful. I thought the documentary did a good job of drawing attention to sexism, specifically as it affected Britney Spears, this is something we really haven't seen discussed too often in reference to this case. Sexism combined with other negative factors like the paparazzi chasing her all the time provide a new angle to the amount of stress she must have been under. The timeline of the documentary was clear and orderly. Sometimes stories like these get all twisted around like they do flashbacks and all this stuff. I like a linear story. They kept it linear, and I thought that was really helpful. Now looking at the negative side. There were a few things that the documentary left out about Spears, like some of the behaviors I mentioned before. Given that Britney Spears has implied she has bipolar disorder, I think it would have made sense for the documentary to feature mental health experts talking about the symptoms that could be associated with that disorder. For example, bipolar disorder is characterized by mania. When somebody is manic, they often make bad decisions, like spending way too much money. I have no idea if that's what happened in this case, but I think a discussion about the symptoms could have helped people understand the disorder better. It could bring some clarity as to why, in some situations, it would be a good idea to have a conservator to protect somebody from that behavior. The lack of specific information about the mental health symptoms of Spears is not necessarily negative. Only Britney Spears could release that information in a case like this. If she doesn't want to tell people what's going on, that is her right and completely understandable. The lack of information about the mental health factors has led to some people saying that the documentary lacked journalistic rigor. So it was produced without the information that would have been necessary for the audience to make an informed decision. With some documentaries, they look at factors like for and against the guilt of somebody, for instance. After that look, enough evidence might be available to make a reasonable conclusion. That's not what's happening in this case. Much of the arguing is academic without knowing the severity and nature of the symptoms. I suppose one could make the argument that the documentary was in some ways unnecessary because it couldn't shed light on the question at hand. Overall, though, I think this was a good documentary. They presented the information that was available, which is all they could really do. It is a topic in which people are interested and a topic that needs to be discussed. Now that I covered the positives and the negatives, I want to offer some observations about the Free Britney movement. With the lack of information about mental health symptoms, there is no way to logically evaluate this case. So people start making emotional decisions. They may not realize it, but they're falling into a lot of the same irrational thinking patterns as conspiracy theorists. For example, the documentary interviewed a couple of Britney Spears fans who ran a podcast about her situation. They, as well as some of their listeners, were trying to find secret messages in the Instagram posts of Britney Spears, like perhaps something to do with her thoughts on the conservatorship, how she was being treated by her father, or something like that, like a message looking for their assistance. Now, I don't know to what extent they did this, but it did really remind me of the QAnon conspiracy theory, where the QAnon followers look for secret messages in Donald Trump's tweets. Conspiracy theorists often claim they can find messages in content that either does not contain a message or is random. Another example, there was an individual in the documentary who was talking about how they were connecting the dots. I think that because I've studied the mentality associated with conspiratorial thinking for so long, whenever I hear the term connect the dots, I immediately look around for a conspiracy theorist. I don't think you're allowed to be a conspiracy theorist without using that phrase at least 5 times a day. It's like in their membership agreement or something. Now, that's not to say that I think the Free Britney movement members are necessarily conspiracy theorists. Some probably are, but most are not. And I don't believe that what they're doing is necessarily bad. Again, Britney Spears indicated that she appreciated their support. In a way, I kind of feel as though Spears is better off because of those supporters. It's like somebody, in addition to the court, is looking out for her best interest. I think the vast majority of the members of the Free Britney movement do actually have Britney Spears' best interest in mind. Where they need to be careful is that they don't start believing something like there are alien lizard humanoids who telepathically communicate with Spears, when everybody knows that many alien lizard humanoids are Hollywood elites, so they would just go visit her. No need for telepathy. What's frightening is that some of the conspiracy theories I've heard in relation to this case are more outrageous than this example. What about my opinion on the conservatorship of Britney Spears? With the limited information that's available, here's what I think is happening in this case. As I said in a prior video, the conservatorship is monitored by the court, and I think the court does operate in the best interest of conservatees, which was also mentioned in the documentary by one of the lawyers. California actually has fewer conservatorships per capita than the United States in general. California has about 45,000 in a state with 40 million people, so a little bit more than 0.1%. In the United States overall, there are 1.5 million for 328 million people, so about 0.4%, much more, a much higher rate than what we see for California. There is no indication based on these numbers that California is overdoing it with the number of active conservatorships. Even though the system appears to be working, it does make sense to me that if Spears does not want her father to be the conservator, then he shouldn't be. That seems like a reasonable request. A lot of people could be in that position, perhaps people with more experience managing that type of situation. Similarly, if she wants her own attorney, like one that she selected, it makes sense to me that she should have her request granted. After all, she is paying all of the bills in this situation. Now, I'm not talking about this from a legal perspective. Clearly, the court made the decision based on the law, but as an empowerment issue. It seems as though it's the least that she could be given, considering that her rights have been taken away. What about the argument that Spears functions well enough to perform, so how can she not be capable to make her own decisions? That doesn't make sense to a lot of people, even those who aren't part of the Free Britney movement. The conservatorship is really about protecting Spears. Therefore, it is about decision-making, not necessarily about global functioning. Many different mental disorders express in a way where an individual could function well in one domain, but not well specifically in the decision-making domain. I would actually expect this to be the case in most situations. So this is not an uncommon observation. We see people who can do a lot of things very well, but they struggle with decisions. With everything I've talked about in mind, here's my summary of this case. I think it's reasonable to believe that the conservatorship system in the case of Britney Spears is functioning as intended, protecting her best interest. The Free Britney movement is well-intentioned, but in general taking a position that is difficult to support with the current data available. Those are my thoughts on the documentary and on the conservatorship in general. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comments section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be enlightening. Thanks for watching.